Hey everyone, welcome to this week's weekly crop. Now, you may have not noticed, but I've been gone for a little while. That's because we all need vacation sometimes. But the good news is I was actually shooting while on vacation in a few other places, so we've got a bunch of great content coming your way. Look for it in the next week or so. But in the meantime, we're here to talk about something that was just announced today at Cinegears in Los Angeles. This is Panasonic's new lineup of goodies. And the very first one, of course, is an exciting release. It is their very first 6K mirrorless camera, full frame. That is the Panasonic S1H. So it is a continuation of their other two cameras, their other full frame cameras, the S1 and the S1R. If you're not familiar with those cameras, they are very similar in their concept, at least, to what would be the A7 III and the A7R III, as well as Nikon's Z6 and Z7. So it's like one is a hybrid camera with lower resolution that does both great photos and video, where the other one is a higher resolution camera that is solely designed really for photo, but of course can accommodate some level of video. So this is something that with the S1 and the S1R that they were able to accomplish. Now, they even said sort of when they released these cameras that it wasn't super video centric, unlike their Micro Four Thirds systems with the GH5, etc. But they were still very powerful cameras, and they still are very powerful cameras. What's being released today is that next gen, and the next gen is really exciting because effectively, and we've been kind of bantering about it in the office here, that the specs on this new S1H is very similar to what you're going to find on a Sony Venice, which is a $70,000 cinema camera. So they're promising a lot of great things. So I'm just going to list them off here for you. This is a 6K camera. Now this is 6K at 4:3, which means that, you know, anamorphic capabilities, things like that. You can crop it down to about a 5K to get your 16:9, 5 point something K. So that's exciting on its own. 6K. Well, it gets better than that, kids. 10-bit 422 internal 6K. If you want 60p, yes, 60p at 6K, 422, 10-bit, you just have to go out to a recorder. But for 24 to 30p, it's still 10-bit 422 internal 6K in a mirrorless body. And the benefit of all this too is they are promising that your camera will not melt. Apparently it's very stabilized in terms of its reliability, and there's no cap on recording time, which means that it will just record as long as the red button has been pressed, which means that that's pretty impressive that you can go an hour or two at that codec, at that resolution, and not experience any heat issues out of a small camera. That is some pretty light years into the future kind of technology, and they're the very first to be able to do this. So if you remember, Panasonic was the very first camera to deliver a mirrorless camera, a small sort of DSLR style mirrorless camera at 4K. Now they're the first to do 6K, especially at full frame, and at this codec is unheard of. It is a huge leap in technology. There's some other great things with that camera. They now have, with the V-Log inside, they are promising what is to be a VariCam color system. So this is almost maybe something similar to what Sony was doing with their FS5, saying you're going to be able to get that Venice look in the FS5. They're saying now you can get the VariCam look through the V-Log and get that 14 stops plus of dynamic range. Now, the manufacturer will say 14 plus stops. It'd be interesting to see once this hits the market, how much actual stops of latitude you're getting out of this camera reliably. But they're basically promising you a VariCam in a small little body that shoots 6K. Pretty mind-blowing. There is no specific release date for this camera. It's just announced, so they're saying fall of 2019. You can expect this camera. In addition to that, there's no pricing information at this time because it is just an announcement. But, you know, as technology goes, you can probably guess at what the price may be in and around if you look at what the S1R or the S1 costs. Of course, with all this, because it's full frame, you're looking at the Leica mount, so you've got access to all the Leica lenses, but also other lenses that are being made specifically for Panasonic by Sigma and by Leica to be able to go with these cameras. So super, super exciting. Now, What about the fact that you own an S1 or an S1R and you're like, bummer, I bought this camera and now I'm kind of locked in. Well, the good news is that they are releasing a paid upgrade firmware that allows your S1 to become effectively an S1H, outside of course of the new resolution. But it's going to give you that 14 plus stops of dynamic range, that Vari-Cam look, the Vari-Cam color. You're also going to get 10-bit 422 internal, and of course that 10-bit 422 60p out with that camera. And then finally, you're also going to get a waveform monitor with this camera. So that's all with that new firmware upgrade. Very exciting. If you already bought an S1, you're getting a whole new camera effectively with this paid upgrade. Now, with all this talk about full frame, one might think, oh, Panasonic is abandoning the Micro Four Thirds lineup. And that is the furthest thing from the truth. In fact, what they've released today is proof that they are still very committed to Micro Four Thirds. And it is this product right here. It is a brand new Leica lens. It's a zoom lens. Now, you might be like, wah, big deal. Well, okay, number one, it's Leica, so you know it's going to be hot. But here's some stats that are going to blow your mind. Zoom lens, it is, for Micro Four Thirds, it's 10 to 25, which means that the full frame image circle equivalent is going to be a field of view of 20 to 50 mil. So that's what it's going to look like on your camera. So that's a very impressive range. If you're shooting doc stuff video, for example, if you are you want one lens to kind of do it all, that's a pretty handy range to be in, 20 to 50. You can do quite a lot with that. And especially with higher resolutions, you know, you can kind of punch in and kind of make it an 80, that type of thing. So really impressive especially if you're outputting to like 1080p or something like that. Very, very useful. But on top of that, here's where it gets awesome, is it is a consistent aperture of a whopping f1.7. That makes this thing a low light monster. And you're going to be able to get some super shallow depth of field that you've really never been able to get before, especially on wider lenses with Micro Four Thirds. Now, of course, a lot of people think, okay, it's a zoom lens, it's super fast. I'm sure that the chromatic aberration and I'm sure the softness towards the edges is going to be out of control. And I can tell you, firsthand knowledge, that is the furthest thing from the truth. This lens is mega tack sharp. And they've introduced a bunch of other elements to correct for chromatic aberration. What they've also introduced is a bunch of different elements and technology within the lens to correct for sort of the lens swirl, that when you are zooming, you might see your image kind of go like that a little bit. And as well, when you're focusing, lens breathing. So there is virtually no lens breathing. It's very minute. And there's no sort of wobbly, circly bit when you're zooming in and out. So that is incredibly fantastic from this lens. It is sharp edge to edge. In addition, you know, sort of like at this widest focal length, there's pretty much no distortion, no lens distortion. So if you're shooting architecture, anything like that, it is like a straight line to the edge, which is mega impressive. And while it doesn't end there, one final amazing thing about this lens is that it has a 9-blade aperture in it. And what that means is that, of course, when you have a wide open lens, you get this beautiful circular bokeh. But when you stop down, you start to see sort of that hexagonal or stop sign sort of edges around your bokeh. And that's, you know, not as buttery smooth looking. Well, I can tell you that, you know, I didn't test it throughout the whole range, but up at 5.6, it still had beautifully round bokeh. And that is really impressive. And that's usually a feature of really high-end lenses. And this is a really high-end lens. Like, make no mistake about it, this is not a cheap lens. It's going to cost you just shy of $2,800 Canadian. So $2,799 is the list price for this thing. But I can tell you that if you buy this, you are getting something that is so optically pristine and gives you such a wide variety of flexibility in terms of both your focal length and your aperture. It's pretty worth the investment if you kind of put all that together. There's a few other features on this thing that I really like. You've got auto and manual focus just with the clutch here, which is awesome. There's a few other lenses that in the market, obviously, that do that. You've got a declicked aperture. So in the inside, you'll still kind of hear go click, 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 click. But in terms of just getting a sort of a soft motion and a soft pull from your aperture, you'll be able to do that with that declicked aperture, which is great. And then it also has an auto mode right on the barrel here as well. And then the final thing about it is that the mechanism, the autofocus mechanism inside is very silent. The camera itself makes a whole lot more noise than the actual lens does. So it's a really nice sort of silent lens. Especially if you got your camera on silent, man, you're like an a ninja in the dark. No one's going to hear you or see you coming. So that's it pretty much for Panasonic. There are some teleconverters as well that they're launching today. So if you're interested in getting some of those, make sure to just kind of check out Panasonic's webpage or look us up here at vistek.ca, and we should have some information on that. And that's it for this week, guys. Thanks so much for watching. As always, please subscribe to our channel. Find us on all the internet places, and thumbs up, thumbs down, however the spirit moves you. And in the meantime, go out there, have fun, and happy shooting.